Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. Damageable actors are such a big thing in games. Anything from barrels to NPCs, boats, anything. Things are destructible in your games. And we need a way to actually cause this destruction. And combat systems themselves can take months to create a decent combat system. They're really expensive. It's an in-depth thing. It's a core principle of your game. So we're not going to go into that aspect, but for testing and quick development, you can create a really basic attack system, which is something we're going to do today. So in this tutorial, we're going to create a super quick system where you can download attack animations from online, plug them in, tell the colliders when to enable, and damage things in front of you. And then in future tutorials, we can have it so you can run up to certain objects, you can hit them, and as long as they're marked as damageable, we can destroy them. And it's good for NPCs and stuff like that. Eventually you will replace this system, but it's a good starting point. So let's get started. So depending on how you want your attacks to work, I'm just going to go for a super basic punch at the moment, and then in the future when I start getting weapons in and stuff, I'm going to change it over. But for now, I just want a super basic punch system. So I punch, it enables a collider. I could just press the button and enable a collider in front of me. Anything that's there, it gets damaged. But we may as well just do the whole animation thing while we're there, just because why not? So unless you've already got your attack animations, I'm just going to come over to mixamo.com and sign up for a free account. It's completely free, it's by Adobe. And then I'm just going to search for, in my case, punching. If you've already got weapons, look for slashing or something like that. If you can't find what animation you want, either make it or just buy one. And I'm going to look for an animation that I think will work. So I want kind of a straight punch. I think this one looks pretty good. So his arm is pretty much fully extended. If we skip down, as you can see, it's fully extended. We've got a good reach with us. We can spawn the collision just, you know, about at elbow length to detect anything that is hit. I think that'll work quite nicely. So I'm going to click download on this. And then the first time I'm going to download an animation, and this is only the first time you download from Mixamo, make sure you download with skin. You also want it set to FBX. You can set your frames per second to whatever you want. I'm going to keep it 30 for now. And then click download. And once we've downloaded it, we need to import it into Unreal. And I'm going to come into my animations folder. If you haven't got one, just create it. And I'm going to right click, new folder, and I'm going to call it Mixamo. Then inside here, I'm going to drag my animation in. So I'm just going to get a file window, drag it across, and drop it in. If that doesn't work, sometimes Unreal's a bit flaky. You can hold over a little bit, or you can simply right click and choose import. Inside here, you'll see it's not got a skeleton, which is correct because we want it to create its own skeleton, and we're going to click import all. Once it's finished importing, you'll see you've got a bunch of different things, but more importantly, you've got the punching skeleton here, which is basically a skeleton that's rigged for all of Mixamo's animations, meaning it's really useful. So now that we've done this, we need to take this animation and we need to plug it in so ALS can use it in our case, because we are using ALS characters. So it's really simple because we've already done it for the polygon Elven, but I'm going to quickly run through it again. I'm going to right click inside my Mixamo folder, and I'm going to go animation, retargeting, and I'm going to create an IK rig. This will tell Unreal what bone structure to use, and I'm going to call it IK rig _ Mixamo. I'm going to open it up. We need to tell it which mesh to use, so I'm going to come and search for our punching, which will give us our Mixamo rig. Yeah, don't worry about it not animating, that's completely fine. So I'm going to come and add the following chains on mine. You may want to change what you have. Root, head, spine, arm L for left arm R for right arm, leg L for left leg, and finally leg R for right leg. And then because it's on Mixamo, we can simply come up and say the hips are the start and end bone of the root, the head is the neck to the head, the spine is spine all the way down to spine 2. The arm L will be the left arm and the left hand. If you choose the shoulder, you'll get some weird arm extension which you don't want. Right arm and then right hand. And then finally for the legs, for the left leg, we'll do left up leg and the left foot. And then finally for the right leg, just the right up leg and the right foot, just like so. Of course, if you want to implement your fingers, your toes, other stuff like that, add your chains in here. All you pretty much do is select the start of the bone to the end of the bone. So for example, if I was doing the fingers, the start of the bone would probably be the hand thumb 1, and then the last bone would be hand thumb 4, and that would be the right thumb. And then you can carry on like that. Next, I'm going to come to my hips. I'm going to right click and do set retarget root, because I believe the Synth is root is there as well. If you've got a different root, just make sure you select it. Control-Shift-S to save. Now that we've got our IK rig, we actually need a retargeter, so the ALS one can actually import it correctly. So in my Mixamo folder, I'm going to right click and I'm going to do animation, retargeting, IK retargeter, and I'll do IKR for IK retargeter and do Mixamo _2_ALS. You can call this anything you want. This is a standard I've taken on, which is where it's coming from and where it's going to, so I always know. So I know if I ever want to import a Mixamo animation, I come to the Mixamo folder and everything's there. And I'm going to open this up. So you'll see we see nothing, that's fine. In the source IK rig, the source is Mixamo, so I'll search for my Mixamo rig, and then the target is my ALS, so I'll search for my ALS rig. Like so. So you'll notice we've got two different positions. The purple one is our Mixamo rig and his arms are not right. So the first thing we're going to do is come to chain mapping here, and you'll see our ALS rig has a lot of different ones, which is fine. I'm going to come to auto map chains and I'm just going to do clear all mapping for now, just to make them the same. So apart from the arms, everything else is pretty much okay. So we need to make sure the arms are in the correct position, otherwise Unreal's going to like add extra dimensions onto it and we don't want that. So I'm just going to come up to the three dots up here and go to edit retargeter pose. If you are in an older version of Unreal, you very well might just see an edit button here. Just click that. So I'm going to click on target and I'm going to edit the retargeter pose because I want to change the ALS's one to match the Mixamo one. I don't want Mixamo to be forced to try and change to ALS's demands. Unreal can handle that for us. So I'm going to come up to my clavicle R and I'm just going to rotate it up just until it looks right. So the clavicle is not the right position, so we'll just put that back to where it was and I'll move to the upper arm R. That's the reason we don't use the clavicle. And I'll set it to about 40, so it's roughly the right height. And I'll come to the lower arm and I'll do the same back to say 20. And then I'll do it here again. So if you've got proper mocap animations, ones you are wanting to be extra specific on, just make sure that you match this up as best you can. So I'll set that to 40 and I'll set this back to 20. There we go. So for my needs, that'll be okay. It's close enough for it to work. You could move the legs in slightly and everything, but for me, this is going to work for me. And then I'll just save that. So now that we've done this, we can come down our chains to basically say to Unreal, from your Mixamo, this is what it needs to bind to. So for the root, I'm going to come and bind the root. For the spine, I'm going to bind the spine. For the left arm, I'm going to bind the arm L. For the right arm, I will do arm R. For the left leg, I will pick the left leg. And then finally for the right leg, I'll pick the right leg. And you might be thinking, why didn't we just name ours the same as this one? You can do that. Some aspects use arm L, leg L. Some aspects use left leg, right leg. Different animators use different naming schemes. It doesn't really matter. This is what the retargeter's for, to link them up, so it doesn't matter hugely. And now coming back to the asset browser, if we just tap our punching animation, we should see him punch. There we go. So I'm going to stop it and just scrub through it very slowly just to see. So his arm's moving, he's bending down, his roots all correct, he's punching. Granted, we haven't done the fingers, so we haven't bent it in. That's fine. Maybe one day I'll look at actually doing the fingers, but you can see overall it looks okay. So I think that'll work nicely for our aspect. Take as long as you need, add all your fingers, make it work. For me, I'm just going to come up and tip exported selected animations. I'm going to come back to animations here, and inside my ALS folder, I'm just going to click export. So now ALS has a punching animation, which is exactly what we need. So now we can move on to actually making him punch. So I need to first add an input for when you click to punch. So I'm going to come down to my plugins folder, my ALS community blueprints input. And inside default here, I'm just going to check if we, just in case we've already got a punching one, which it doesn't look like we do, so that's great. We've got an aiming one, which is using the right mouse button, but we haven't got one for actually punching. So in my default folder, I'm just going to come and copy, say, ragdoll action, and then I'm just going to rename it to IA_attack. Inside my input mapping context, I'm going to add a new mapping, and I'm going to add my attack. And then for the PC and mouse, I want it to just be the click, so I'm just going to click the keyboard and click. And then I'm going to add another one, and then for the controllers, let's pick, I don't know controllers. We'll do square, whatever that one is. So I'm going to do button, face, left. So that should be square or whatever Xbox's equivalent is. And then we can compile and save. There we go. So now that we've done that, I'm going to open my ALS character blueprint and I'm going to create a new graph called combat, just so it's nice and separated out. I'm going to right click and do IA attack, and we should have our enhanced action events. There we go. So when we click start, this is where we basically trigger the punch. So the first thing I'm going to do when we start punching, is play the montage we need. So I'm going to do play montage. And you'll see we have two, play anim montage and play montage. We want play montage. The reason we're going with play montage instead of play anim montage is anim montage literally plays it and then ignores it. You've got no control over it. Whereas the montage literally plays it and then ignores it. You've got no control over it. Whereas the montage, we have extra options we can do with it. So we can tell when it's completed, if we've notified, if it's been interrupted, such as they've been attacked, and we can control what it's going to do, which is perfect. I'm going to plug that into started. And then from here, we actually need to create a montage based on our animation so we can actually play it. And this is super easy to do. So I'm going to come back to my animations folder in my ALS. And I'm simply going to right click my punching and I'm going to rename it first. So I'm going to call it AS_punching. So animation sequence punching. And then I'm going to right click it, create anim montage. And I'm going to call this AM punching. And now we can open this up. So this is our animation montage here, punching. And all it's doing is playing the animation. A montage is special because we can add extra things to it, such as notifiers, we can add events and other code, what we need later. So for now, just on here, I'm just going to come back to here and I'm going to search for our punching montage. And there it is. So one key thing I see all the time about people with animations not working is the animation blueprint. So in order to make a montage work, you must have an animation blueprint with it set to animation mode of animation blueprint. In order to make the animation blueprint work, you need to add a special node to it. And don't be worried about editing it. What we're going to do is not going to really break anything. If it does, it's just a single node. So I'm just going to come and open our animation blueprint. And inside here, you'll basically come to the anim graph and you'll see all the little layers it's built up upon. And the node we're looking for is default slot. And this default slot basically tells this animation blueprint to use this montage and allow us to actually use it. So looking down here, the ALS system does not have this built in, which is completely fine. And you can even see the comment at the top basically saying, you're supposed to modify this. This is what you need to do. So I'm just going to come at the very end here. This might not be the best place for everyone. For me, at the moment, it is okay. And I'm just going to come in and add default slot just before we go to the output pose, just like that. And then just to comment it, just so it matches everything else, so I'm just going to add in allow anim montages. That single node will now make the animations work, and you don't believe how many people I see forget that node. So many plugins use anim montages, so many people try to use it and can't get it to work. Animation blueprint, default slot. And then the only other thing we need to do is we need to drag in the mesh and just plug it into the in-skeletal mesh component like so. And that's all you need to do. So let's give it a try. So now you can see if I walk up and press punch, the character will play the animation. But you'll notice there's quite a lot of bugs. So at the moment, you can walk as you're freezing. Now there's two ways you can fix this. You can create multiple slots, so you can have one for the upper body so they can run and punch, or you can just freeze them in place. At the moment, I'm just going to freeze them in place because I don't want them to walk around. And then the other thing is we can spam click it and, you know, watch them dance a little bit. We need to stop that as well. So a couple of things we need to fix, because you can also do it when you're in midair, which we don't want. Can you do it while you're ragdolling? Yeah, it totally messes up the ragdolling. So there's a few little bits we need to fix. So that's completely fine. So I'm going to come back to my character, and this is basically where we need to either prevent it or allow it at this point. And if we do allow it, then we need to stop everything else from working. So I'm going to drag this anim montage across a little bit, and from just under here, I'm going to drag in the character movement like so. I'm going to drag up and just get the movement mode. Then from the movement mode, I'm going to drag off and do a switch and plug it in up here to the starter. So the movement mode is how your character is currently enabled to move, and you'll see there's a bunch of different ones, but we really are only using walking at the moment. So if your character is walking, then we're going to plug them in to play the montage. But if we are starting to move, then I'm actually going to get the character movement just after this and do set movement mode, and I'm going to set it to none. So this basically means they're not walking anymore, meaning if they try to spam click it, it will stop them because they're not there anymore, and that'll stop it from doing it. And there is some other stuff we can do, so we could like go and find wherever it ragdolls and block it there as well. That's loads of stuff we can fix just out of this. For now, this is just a dev thing. And then finally, we actually need a way to enable it. And we could just do this on completed, but there's certain bits after the animation, like there, we kind of want to give control back to the player, otherwise they're waiting a whole extra half a second kind of thing nearly. And we don't really need that. We want that for the fade out, but we don't want the player to be frozen at this point. So what I'm actually going to do is come back to my animation montage, and we're going to take advantage of the notifiers. So while we're here, we're actually going to create 3. We're going to create one which enables the collider for them to actually apply damage to people. We're going to one to disable the collider, so when the arm's retracting back, we don't need to be doing damage anymore. And then finally one to just tell it, okay, you can enable movement again. And these are really simple to set up. So all I'm going to do is scrub across my timeline and see, for the first one, where do we want to enable the collider. So about there, so anything past this point should apply damage. So I'm going to come down to my notifiers line here. On line 1, I'm going to right click, add notify, and montage notify, like so. I'm just going to make sure the keyframe lines up with it. There we go. So if you click it, you can set a notify name, which we are going to do. So I'm going to set mine to attack start. And then I'm going to drag across to where it should stop attacking. So when it's retreating, so about there, we shouldn't be doing any more damage. Right click, add notify, montage notify. Do not click new notify. That's for something different. It won't work. You want montage notify. And then click on it again, and we will call it attack stop. And then finally, we'll drag off to where he should be able to move again. So about there, I'll right click, add notify, montage notify, reposition it, and then I will call this anim stop. And I can save. And that's all we need to do. So now back in the ALS character, we can drag off of this notify name and do a switch on it, and it'll switch on name. And we can plug this in not to the very top, because that's what happens after this has started running. We're instead going to plug it into on notify begin. So when we have been notified that something is happening, we will go into here. And then on pin names, I'm just going to drag in 3 pins, and we're going to add in our attack start, and anim start. And I'm going to untick the default pin because we don't use it. So here we go. So on anim stop, we know what we need to do is take the movement mode and set it back to walking. I'm just going to plug this in to anim stop and set the movement mode to walking. So now when we punch, the animation will freeze our character. He'll punch, it'll give us control back, we can walk away. Perfect. However, this is where we now come to the attack start and the attack stop. So I'm going to come back to my viewport, and depending on how complex you want your collisions to be, you may want to do a really basic box, or you may want to do a complex sphere around wherever you want to go. If you think of games like Dark Souls, when you roll under somebody's sword, that sword can breeze over the top of you because the collision is directly on that sword. However, if you think of a game, say like Bully, you punch, it doesn't matter if they're stood up or crouched, you're gonna hit them. And that's where we're going to go on this really basic one. Do whatever you feel's best. You can even apply a sphere directly to their hands if you want accurate punching. For me, all I'm going to do is click on the mesh, and I'm just going to come and add a box collision directly in front of him, and I'm going to call it attack damage. And I'm going to drag this out, and I'm just going to put it up, drag it out a little bit, and I know when he punches, he doesn't reach that far out, so I think that'll do, just about there. So anyone in this radius will be damaged by it. Then I'm going to come all the way down to on component begin overlap, and I'm going to click it. Then I'm just going to grab other actor for simple sake for now, and just do apply damage. And then for the player's basic damage, I'm just going to apply something like 10. And then we can apply other arguments here if we want. So the event instigator, I'll just do self. For the damage causer, I'll just drag off and do self, so we can say it was the player who damaged you. For the type class is something we'll get into eventually. I'm just going to leave it empty, and I'm going to hit compile and save. So now what we can do is come back to the attack damage, and I'm actually going to scroll up to the collision presets. I'm just going to set it to no collision, like so. So on attack start, when we actually start the attack, I'm going to drag the animation damage in, and I'm going to set collision profile name, and I'm going to set it to overlap all dynamic. And this will basically mean it should attack any actor it sees, and then whether the actor actually takes advice from that damage or not will be okay by us. And then on anim stop, we can actually copy this just below itself, and instead of overlap all dynamic, we're just going to call it no collision. And I'm going to plug it in like so. We want to make sure that the update overlaps is ticked. This basically means when the collision is enabled, if there is a character already in the position, it will take damage. It's not going to wait until the next time you fire. So now let's give it a go. So if I come in and just play it now, we can now hit play, and you'll see he'll punch. We can't move while we're doing it until it ends. Really, really basic attack. Now I think it's a little bit slow personally, so I am just going to come up and to my montage, and I'm just going to set the rate scale to something like 1.2. You can play this just to see. It's a little bit faster. It's a light punch, bang. It's meant to be really quick kind of thing. And while it's working, we just need something to test it with to actually make sure we can destroy things now. So I'm just going to come into my content drawer, and I'm going to come into my blueprints, and I'm going to create a new folder called damageable, and I'm just going to create a dead quick blueprint class actor called BP_damage test, and I'm going to open this up. So for my sake, I will just drag a static mesh in, and I will make it a barrel. There we go. Nice basic barrel. I'll come down and we'll keep the collision on because we do need that. And then I'm going to come over to the event graph. I'm going to delete these ones up here. And then I'm going to right click and do event any damage. So this is how we pick up somebody who said to us, you've received damage. So our code here will grab anything we've punched and say, take damage. Whether the actor does anything with it or not is completely irrelevant to us. In the future, we'll properly check and say, is this actor actually damageable? Should we damage it? Then send a message to make it more efficient. For now, super simple, we're not going to do that. And then on damage test in here, we can actually now take the damage and just do destroy because they've died. Eventually, this is where you'll put your life, your death animation, blah, blah, blah. And now we can come back and drag it in. So if we drag this barrel here and come and click play, we can now run up to the barrel. And if we hit it, pop, the barrel disappears. Just like that. Dead simple. It might seem really basic and it's not ready for a game, I will agree. However, the point of it is you can now destroy things until you finalize the combat system. If you're running into issues or you need to test things better, just come into your attack damage here and just set the line thickness to something like 2 and then change the hidden in game to unticked. This will basically mean you can see the cube when it's visible, so you can test if it's right. This is perfect if you put it on your hands as well. So you can see my cube is here just like we tested before. So if I come in and just punch, pop, it disappears. You might see an issue where if you line 2 things up, it destroys them both. That's the benefit and the trade-offs you get of the cube method. The cube method means you can only attack one thing. You can attack multiple things at once. You can, of course, prevent this if you come to your attack damage here. When you're actually applying damage, you could just set the cube to no collision again to stop it. However, for me, I'm going to keep it so I can attack multiple things at once. If my enemies are that close, they can both take a punch. You could also make slightly more efficient by removing the attack damage and instead creating a box on the fly. That will be slightly more efficient. But again, this isn't my final system. It's just for me to run around and test things. It's exactly what I need. Just now I can proceed on to create quests of attacking NPCs and such like that. Dead simple. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. This is my super basic attack system. In the future, we will expand on this. We'll add more moves, we'll add different animations, we'll add health bars, damageable, all stuff like that. But for now, I can come and I can take out a couple of barrels just like that. Then we can plug onto that, add enemies. We can now add combat sequences where people try to attack us, bandits, destructible quests. It adds so much for something so little. And just don't forget, once you're finished with your box, hidden in game, and then line thickness back to 0. There we go. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this helped. Have you got any improvements you would have made to this? Or are you just waiting for the next part where we upgrade it? Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.